and Row Show.
Forever.
I got a feeling things is turning up for me now. Stack to the ceiling, money taller than a tree now. Man, I've been winning on winning, victory with a smile. I see the competition coming, it's gonna take a while. We set the table up, high stakes of cheddar cake.
The Adam and Row Show.
Hello, welcome back to another Adam and Row show. I'm your host Adam, and Row is out there somewhere. Hello, Row.
Hello, Adam. How you doing today, man?
Good, always good. I don't think I've ever said that I'm not doing well. But yeah, all's good over here in the UK, and thanks to every one of our listeners from last week who listened to the show and gave us quite a few thumbs up, quite a lot of listens. We're loving the growing audience once again, and we had some new commenters this week as well, which we're going to dive into in a second. But as always, when I start off the show, I always remind you all that if you haven't previously subscribed to the channel, make sure you do hit that. And if you want to leave us a question about a certain subject, whatever it is you want, you can do so. And we'll put it in the YouTube comments, and we'll do our best to answer it next week. We also ask a trivia question, which we're going to come into in a minute. We only had one person answering this week, but that person got it spot on. And I've got to say, I'm sure that person must have looked it up, because it was so quick the way he answered it, and he got it right. Spot on. So well done to Jamie Weisner, who answered the question on Impact's debut on Destination America in 2015. I think it was January 7th from memory. All four titles were defended. Who won those matches? And Bobby Lashley won the world title from Bobby Roode. The Revolution retained the tag titles against the Wolves. Austin Aries won against, I think it, from memory, it was Low Key. And Taryn Terrell retained the Knockouts title in a battle royal. So quite a tough question there. And if you enjoyed scratching your head over that one, then you're going to have another one in a minute. And we did also ask a bonus trivia question halfway through the show, just to make sure you're all listening. And this was actually quite interesting, because a load of people thought they knew the answer, and quite a few people got it wrong. The answer was indeed the Shearer Shuffle. And just looking back over this, who was the first person? I think it was Critical Sting who was the first one. Hakeem Fullerton also got in there. There was a couple of people who came up with variations on it, such as, I think there was the Shearer Dance, the Shearer, what was the other one someone said? The Shearer Shake. But I believe it was called the Shearer Shuffle. That was right, Ro, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go into a few more of the trivia questions. Sorry, not trivia questions, the YouTube comments in a second. But before we do that, we are going to set this week's trivia question. And once again, we'll give a shout out to those who get it right next week. But this one is particularly tough, and the subject matter is something that I've said many times on this show that was one of my favourite parts of TNA as it was at the time. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in the main part of the show today as well. But it's to do with aces and eights. And I know that there's a load of people who hated aces and eights. I think it's, for me, one of my favourite storylines in wrestling. But my question is that when the aces and eights members started to be revealed, all these kind of things, they all had different positions in the aces and eights, such as, Bully Ray was the president. Okay, so one of the ranks in the aces and eights was the sergeant at arms. However, there was two sergeant at arms during the run. I can't remember quite why the first person was stripped, but there was two sergeant at arms in aces and eights. I want to know who the second sergeant at arms was. Okay, so not the first one. I want to know who the second one was. And I be honest with you, even I didn't know this. I had to look this up, and it was only when I was looking for a trivia question I came across this. So there's the question: who was the second sergeant at arms within the aces and eights? And when I said this to Ro was like, "Really? I can't believe that. You didn't know this one, did you?"
Nah, not at all. Because I was trying to think of the members, man, and I mean they had they had a few top names at the time, but then a lot of the guys were kind of like lower to mid.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about aces and eights in the show today. But before we do that, we're going to dive into the loungers' comments. So, first of all, once again, thank you very much for your comments each and every week. Make sure you do give us a thumbs up as well. I do sometimes say I don't care if you give us a thumbs down, but I think this is the first show on the Impact Lounge in quite some time where there's been no thumbs down, so thank you for that. Hopefully the mysterious thumb downer has disappeared, but make sure you do give us a thumbs up as well when you're listening to this. But we had a new listener, Irfan Iqbal, who asked us to maybe give a bit more of a summary at the beginning of each show and just let us know what's contained in there, because these do tend to go about 45 minutes. But hopefully you all enjoyed the longer shows as well as the short ones. We do try sometimes to come on and give you, 5-minute breaking news like I did with the Eli Drake situation. More on that in a little while. But yeah, we do try and keep them so that there's quite a lot of content in there so that you can all listen on your commute to work. So we had William Smith, as always, telling us that he thinks Impact is awesome. He was there. D'Angelo Fowler. I can't remember coming across him, but D'Angelo, if you're a long-time listener, thank you. Your name rings a bell. Jamie Weiser with the right answer. Whoopsie's always there, and he pointed out that I'm always on vacation because we value vacation time more than other countries, and that's pretty true. Well, what's it like over there, Ro? Do you get many vacations from your work?
I mean, I think it just depends the employer. Like, I work for the county, so I accrue like 16 hours a month, but I know some employers like the way that you kind of obtain vacation time, it just varies. So, I mean, if you're able to get it like how I am, then, you can take vacation whenever, but sometimes, some people aren't as fortunate. So it just all depends. Yeah,
we get anywhere between 25 and 33 days holiday a year is what we get over here. That's the way they do it. They do it in days usually. So as I said, next week I will be around. It's the week after. Hopefully Ro will find a tag team partner to get the hot tag and take over the show for the week. We had Critical Sting with the right Shira Shuffle. Thank you for that. And Eddie also commented about Shira coming back. Not that impressed there. Hakeem Fullerton once again got it. Theo Springer talked about Killer Cross being a star, and that's something, once again, I think Ro's going to bring up at the end of the show, but completely agree with you. He is by far the best thing on Impact at the moment, as in from a star power point of view. I think he just gets it. He understands how to wrestle, how to tell a story in and out of the ring. I just think the guy is amazing. Ed Grace agreeing with me about Rebellion. It's taking place tonight, by the way. So anything we say on this week's show, please do bear in mind that you'll most probably hear this after Rebellion. So if we've said anything and it turns out to be true, then it was a guess. And if you hear something, we haven't got any spoilers on our side, or if we're completely wrong, then obviously we've been worked just like everyone else. Swackfan 100 thinks Shira is good, and hopefully they'll use him better. Well, they couldn't really use him any worse. Although I didn't mind him in it was the Revolution he was in, was it? James Storm's Revolution. Yeah, he was okay in that, but he didn't stay around for too long. I tell you who was good in that, and you can tell me your thoughts, Ro, before we go any further. But did you like TJ Perkins when he was manic?
No, not necessarily. I don't know. I thought it reminded me too much of the Suicide character. I mean, I know eventually they modified the costume to put an M to replace the S, but yeah, I didn't care for his character too much.
I interviewed him a couple of times, and once, he was a really, really nice guy, and it's a shame he never made it really in WWE. I know he was the champion over there for a little while, but he never really, was a breakout star in there. But whenever I've talked to him, he was great. He was a great chatter, carried on, talked about any topic you want. Really cool guy in real life. Critical Sing asked us about Sami Callihan's look, saying it looks like it's going back to its normal 2017-2018 look where it's getting darker. I quite liked him with the shaved head. He was losing his hair anyway, wasn't he? So I haven't really got much of a thought on that one. Lord Eddard Stark talks about AEW stuff is not confirmed about the television airing and things like that. I don't think anything's confirmed at this point, but I don't want to use Meltzer as a source or anything like that, but I suppose he's the one who starts talking about this. By all accounts, it is an infomercial effectively at the time. Now, someone did ask us what's the difference. Well, effectively, television networks, so when Impact was on Spike or whatever, they paid Impact money to make the production and air it, and then they get to keep the advertising revenue. I believe if you're buying time as an infomercial, you're paying for the recordings yourself, which is what they're doing anyway at the moment, but you're paying for everything yourself. and you're giving the content free to the network, who then any advertising revenue comes back to Impact in this case, or AEW, or wherever it may be, as opposed to the network. So I think you're basically giving them free exclusive content. Now, I maybe if any of our listeners are someone in the TV business, they can tell us how it works, but I believe that's how it would work, that anything that they kind of generate from that product that they're giving to the network goes back to them as opposed to the network. Jim Mahal Francis got Shira Dance wrong. Killer Cross and Cage are the guys that could go to the next level from Carter Inc. Thank you for that. Joe O'Keefe talked about the Lucha Brothers AEW contract is not exclusive. And I think, once again, Carl and Trent talked about this on the weekly review show. They said that was one of the things that they revealed, that it is not exclusive. So that means that tonight's main event, tag team title, I should say, is not conclusive in any way. I think that if they had signed exclusive AEW, they'd be dropping it. But I suppose that adds a little bit of mystery to it now. Whether they'll be featured as much going forward, I'm not sure. Ro, what do you think about the Lucha Brothers? Do you think they add much to the product?
I thought they'd be better served if they were separate, because I think you could put thrust Pentagon in the main event picture, and then you could put Phoenix in the X Division. Look, they're fine. I kind of just feel like they're one of these teams where, at least for me when I'm watching, like it's kind of like get their stuff in. Everybody gets their stuff in, very spot heavy. But, the one comment I want to make I guess maybe we can touch on this a little bit if you want to, with the whole exclusivity versus inclusivity. Like, I wonder, and Trent, I know Trent and Kyle, you said they covered it. But I just kind of wonder how long the exclusivity, like just say for them, for example, if they are signed with AEW, how long that would last. Because I would imagine if they're getting paid very good money, they're going to want them to be able to work their shows, or their stuff is going to take precedent over maybe Impact stuff. So then that in itself can create a problem. So let me ask you, what are yours it would take? Do you prefer like talent being able to work everywhere, or do you think them working at one promotion is fine?
Well, I think if you're WWE, I can understand why you have exclusivity, because you have the monopoly on the market anyway. So you don't want to see you don't want to see the Undertaker turning up, at a bingo hall somewhere in the Midwest. I understand that, and you're paying them very good money to be exclusive. However, when you're the second promotion, and everyone's got their views on whether Impact is, Ring of Honor is, AEW, New Japan, whatever it is. No one else is in the same league as WWE. So I don't think exclusivity works, and I think it works against you, if anything, because let's face it, if you have got someone like Pentagon Jr., and he can go and work anywhere at another promotion, and I'm just someone who doesn't really watch Impact, but I go along to my local wrestling event and I see someone like Pentagon, and he says, you can see me every week on Impact, I'm going to tune in. So I think it's a very different thing, to the top league, so I think it's better for people not to be under exclusive contracts, and when I say exclusive, I mean, if you have a booking clash like you insinuated there, I think wrestlers know when they're going to be needed for the major, the ones who pay their wages. So I don't really see that being a problem, a conflict of interest, as long as they're open up front and honest about it, and they know what they're doing. And I can't see why companies like AEW and Impact can't work together so that they're not putting on pay-per-views and tapings at the same time. Surely it can't be that hard. And you want to kind of tag up. But anyway, just going back to Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix, I don't know how much they're getting paid by Impact, but I don't think it's very good value for money. I'm sorry to tell you. I know they're the tag champions. I much preferred it when LAX were, and I prefer all other tag teams. And it comes back to my own personal thoughts on wrestling, which is I like storytelling. And you can't. It's very hard to tell a story when your two guys don't really speak my first language. And I'm sorry, mate, that makes it sound quite brutal, but I would much rather see a storyline with the Dinas or the Daisy Hit Squad, or, well, not KM Mafala Bar, but, someone else, because at least I know I'm going to enjoy it. There's going to be promos back and forth. Yeah, they might be good wrestlers, but as you said, they're a bit spot monkeys at times. I think Phoenix could have been a fantastic X Division champion, and that's where I'd put him. And Pentagon Junior, I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
I mean, he, being former world champion, I just think when we're talking about the main event scene, he could have been a guy that you could have thrusted. Like, I feel like we were robbed of him versus Johnny Impact. That's a feud that I thought we would have seen when Pentagon initially won the Impact World Championship. So, once they put them together as a team, I don't want to say I was super down on it, but I didn't think it was needed. And, one of my fears, and it looks like it came to life, was I feel like they're just going to be feuding with LAX and all these other tag teams, aren't really going to get an ample opportunity. And, now when you're thinking about, like, say, in the event if LAX were to win, like, we've seen this story before where LAX, when they're champions, they manage to run through everyone. Not that that's a fault of their own, but they run through all the teams, and then there's no one for them to really work with. There's no kind of viable threat. So, I would prefer if we had them as separate guys. But if the company were to lose them, I really don't think it'd be that big of a hit. Because I think they got, with these new teams that they got, well, I know Rascals has been there for a minute, but, you got the North, you got all these other tag teams now that you can easily thrust into the mix, should you want to go that route.
For me, what I would do is split LAX, turn them into singles runs for a little while, just the same as they did with Eddie and Davey Richards, have them feud against each other, have the mouthpiece Conan take over the Lucha Brothers, and have them, having these on-comers for a little while. It freshens it up because, as you said, LAX have pretty much faced everyone. And at this point, both these teams, in the format they are, I've lost interest. Whereas LAX used to be my favourite thing. I just want to see them do something different. And this feud with Pentagon and Phoenix seems to be going on forever. So I would say keep the belts on Pentagon Jr., have Conan turn on Ortiz and Santana and have them feud in some fashion during the fallout. But anyway, that's that. Let's move on. James St. Patrick. Enjoyed the show, guys. No thumbs down. Quite correct. Joseph Smith, the Shearer Shake. You got it wrong as well. Be glad if they brought Shearer back. They could have him in a nice babyface position with Falabar or Scarlett and turn him here and join the Desi Hit Squad. Now, I can't really see Shearer being the face of the company myself because A, he's not that great a wrestler. Not that makes a difference, but nothing suggests to me that he had the chops to be a top babyface. If you can't wrestle, then you've got to speak, be able to talk, and he doesn't seem to have quite those two abilities at the moment. Any thoughts?
I really don't think, because I think a lot of people probably think they'll put him in the Desi Hit Squad. I really don't think that. I think they'll push him. I mean, who knows? Because I think just for his overall look, I think that's enough to get him a substantial push. But, who knows? I mean, if they do something, if they're going to India and they really want to kind of, make good with them, I could see them kind of giving him some type of run similar to what they did, where they had him win that, whatever that trophy was, the Sony 6 trophy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think if there was another title for him to win, I'm sure they'd probably put it on him. But yeah, that's the only route that I could see for him.
Okay, and that pretty much closes out the comments for the week. So thanks for that. Oh, there was one other one as well. I think. There was someone who asked us if they wanted to get a nickname for me. I think it might have been on the weekly review. Was it Hakeem Fullerton, I think, or Jamal Francis? One of the two. Talked about how they gave J-Bone the Professor nickname and Scumbag Kyle, and they wanted one for me. So if you've got a nickname for Ro or myself, please feel free to leave it below. And we don't care if it's offensive. Well, I don't care if it's offensive. Ro might. But yeah, it'll be nice to get a nickname as opposed to, as Trent called me the other day, Adam, that mysterious English dude. I'm a mysterious English dude, apparently. There you go. So, I'm not even English, by the way. I'm Welsh. So there you go. Most of you Americans don't even know where Wales is. It's where Tom Jones comes from. I'm sure you've all heard of Tom Jones. Right.
And Mason Ryan.
Mason Ryan. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. God, I forgot about him. What's he doing these days?
I think he's probably out of the business.
Is he? Terry, what was his name? The one who was the freak in the Menagerie.
Oh, Rob Terry.
Rob Terry, yeah, he was also from Wales. There you go. And Mandrews as well. Mandrews was. There you go. There's loads of Welsh wrestlers. None of them have achieved much, mine, but there you go. Right, on to this week's show. So what were we going to talk about? Well, there's been a few bits of news, but the one I will just cover very quickly, because, if you're listening to this, it might just be after watching Rebellion. You never know. This might go up before Rebellion, because we're going to send it over to the lads to put it up in a while, but I doubt you will hear this before Rebellion. But it's Eli Drake tweeted out plane tickets to, was it Toronto? I think it was Toronto, just yesterday. Obviously, maybe just trying to play a little bit on the fact that Rebellion is taking place in Toronto. So I'll ask you straight, and this is a prediction, bearing in mind at the moment, we're most probably about 8-9 hours away from the pay-per-view. Is Eli Drake going to show up at Rebellion?
No.
Okay, that's the end of the show, folks. There we go.
If I can elaborate
go on, Ro. Let's elaborate.
My prediction is we're going to see a picture he'll probably upload in the next couple of days of him at the because the basketball team, they had a game yesterday, or on Saturday. So I think it's going to show a picture of him at the game.
So you think he's just working us?
Yeah, because the way that the picture was cropped, you notice it didn't show the date or the time or anything. So, and then there's two events that were going on. Saturday was the basketball game and Sunday was Rebellion. So it's easy to assume, the Rebellion one. But it was just the way Eli knew what he was doing.
Yeah, of course he does. And what's quite ironic about it is that he says that you can't, use social media to continue a feud or something like that. He says that's not the way it should be played out. And here he is on, was it Twitter or Instagram? I don't know which one. Doing Twitter. Exactly what he said shouldn't be done. Anyway, I hope that it does turn out all to be a work of some sort, and he does turn up tonight, but not in a Enzo way, where he jumps the barrier at a WWE event. Hopefully, if he is there, it's all part of the storyline. And one thing that has been strange about this is that they haven't really mentioned much about Eli Drake on commentary. Have you noticed this? But with KM, they've been throwing insults his way each and every week since he's kind of announced that he's gone.
Well, they wrote Eli off essentially this past episode because they said that, I think something about him running off or something like that. And I think that was their way of writing him off. So, yeah.
But just from a commentary point of view, they haven't been disparaging towards him, not in the same way that they've been throwing cheap shots at KM, saying things like, Scarlett's the best partner Fowler's ever had, things like that. It's been 2 or 3 weeks in a row that they've done that.
Well, I think the difference was in the event of KM's, his contract expired, I want to say March 1st. So when he wasn't brought to the taping, I think the mindset was probably already he was done. Whereas with Eli, remember, they had him at the tapings and he got terminated while he was, already had taped stuff for Impact. So, yeah, that's the only thing I could think of.
It's very easy to redo commentary if you wanted to.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in the event of Eli, he was kind of involved in something. So I think, it was kind of, and that's probably the reason why they did what they did this past week. Whereas KM, his contract had expired. They didn't bring him in. So it was probably easier to kind of take jabs at him because he wasn't there anyway.
Anyway, the KM stuff, by the way, I think Don Callis and KM are most probably friendly. And I think that's most probably a bit of a rib between friends. Anyway, moving on to some of the news this week. I've got 2 bits I wanted to talk about, and it's about wrestlers and ex-talent talking about their time in Impact and other promotions. And the first one is Gail Kim. And I'm not going to read out what she said exactly, but she effectively said that the booking in Impact is far superior to WWE at the moment. It's basically what she said. And I can't remember if she was talking about the Knockout specifically. I think she was. It might have just been the booking generally. But, she is very, very anti-WWE. And I can understand why, because they didn't treat her very well. But at the same time, it's funny anyone listening to this most probably looks at dirt sheets or, wrestling sites, which has got comments. And I think if you go onto most WWE articles, most internet wrestling fans talk about how shocking the booking is. I don't know if you've noticed this, Ro, but it's quite a common theme that most people are down on WWE booking. However, as soon as you get an article from Gail Kim slating WWE booking and saying Impact is better, what is funny is how they all come out and say she's completely bitter, despite the fact that most of these fans 2 minutes before have been slating WWE booking and don't watch Impact Wrestling. So it always tickles me, because I think in this instance, whether she's bitter or not, surely she is absolutely spot on that Impact Wrestling booking is better than WWE at the moment.
Well, I think where it just comes from is, excuse me, anytime that you, because obviously Impact's the company she works for, so she's going to put the company over, rightfully so. But I think anytime you're putting over your company, the first thing people are going to want to do is like, okay, like kind of prove it. And unfortunately, and I know people hate to talk about this, but when you look at the viewership and somebody's making the statement like it's better, yeah, even though these people are trashing to the E, they're looking at it as like, well, okay, if they're going based off of numbers, they're gonna think, well, your stuff obviously isn't even better because the numbers are rising, dropping like that. So I just kind of think it's one of those things. And me personally, I would rather her, and I get it, whoever's interviewing her, they're asking the questions, but I would try to kind of get away from answering WWE stuff and just talk more about Impact. Like you think about when they interview AJ Styles, I can't think of his most recent one, but I'm pretty sure they don't really mention too much TNA stuff nowadays. They probably mention all his WWE stuff. So in order to kind of avoid those type of conversations where, because like I said, it is going to be perceived as, oh, she's just bitter. Why can't she get WWE out of her mouth? She's with Impact, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's probably better to try to avoid those type of questions moving forward.
But you say try to avoid these questions. Every interviewer is going to ask her those questions. That's just the nature of it, isn't it? If you're interviewing Gail Kim and you know that she badmouths WWE, you want to get a soundbite. It's the same for every interview.
But you know how it's going to go over. I just kind of just thinking, look, I'm not trying to say how someone should speak, but, if you ask me about my former employer, one that I'm unhappy with, I just be like, look, my time there, wasn't the best, but I'm happy to have moved on. And eventually the interviewer will get the idea like, hey, don't dive into this. But once you start diving in, the whole article, every time she said something, she can be talking about Impact, but you notice the headline will be Gail Kim says blah, blah, blah of WWE,
It does, and it's going to lead into a nice segue now anyway, because obviously as an interviewer, you want to get controversy because that's why people tune in, and that's why they have these headlines. And who said controversy creates cash?
Bischoff.
And we'll move on to Bischoff in a second. But before I do, listeners, if you have any views on Gail Kim, do you think she should just stop answering questions on WWE, or do you think she's got every right for coming from a position of, well, not privilege, of experience, of having been in the machine to be able to say it? Or do you think that it's detracting from what she's doing in Impact? And I think this has been a very well-booked feud with her and Tessa, to be honest. Talking of which, I loved that scene where Tessa went to the restaurant the other week and was taking bites out of people's burgers and things. I thought that was fantastic. I don't know what you thought of that, Ro. Oh, yeah, by the way, before you answer that, this gives you a perfect opportunity to plug the Clock Cleaners again. Come on. What did you think of it?
Oh, no. I mean, it was just a go-home show. I mean, by the time this drops, the pay-per-view will already end and stuff. So, yeah, but go ahead and listen to our predictions.
But no, you enjoyed this segment though, yeah? Well, I know that was last week's, so it wasn't this week's, but I thought it was very good. Right, okay, I mentioned about Eric Bischoff, and I said at the beginning, we were talking about aces and eights. I'm going to read you what Eric Bischoff said this week. And for long-term listeners of this show, I can't stand Eric Bischoff. I think him and Bully Ray are both scumbags. But not likable scumbags like Kyle on the weekly review. These guys are just leeches on the wrestling industry. So he was asked about his TNA run, and this is what he said. For the most part, it is very regrettable. Looking back, I wish I wouldn't have done it, with one or two exceptions. It was an opportunity for me to work with my son, and for my son to get an opportunity to work in the wrestling business, which is something that was a goal of his as a young boy and a teenager growing up. he's fantasized having an opportunity to work in the wrestling business with his father, and being in TNA gave me the opportunity to provide to him. And I'll be forever grateful for that, because that is a memory that my son and I share to this day that's very special for both of us. And I'll never, ever minimize that. But other than that, meh. So, basically, he's admitted that he didn't enjoy the experience and that it meant nothing to him other than getting his kid over. So what do you think about these comments, and what do you think about Garrett as well?
Well, it's crazy you mentioned Bully Ray, because Bully Ray had mentioned something similar. Well, not on the same kind of thing, but he was talking about how, and I think it was a week ago, where how they were going to bring him back, but they were going to give him the same storyline as Drew Galloway. And he was like, screw that. First off, before I just give him my thoughts, I think it's kind of unfair, and I understand they're just, they're being truthful in these interviews, but I think what happens sometimes is when, people are giving, telling their experiences, whether it's positive or negative, like that's the old company. So that's kind of no reflection on the current company. And I think sometimes when folks make these comments, now I'm not saying not everybody, but for some people, they look at it as like, oh, yeah, I realize why I don't watch, which is unfair. With that said, this is the problem that I have. Like his son, I thought his son was terrible, but this was a problem that I had with the company. And sometimes we see it here. Sometimes there's nepotism that happens, and there's nothing that ever good that comes from it. You got a company that brings over someone who's, people have looked at as being the reason why WCW failed. I don't think it was all him, but okay, that's debatable. And then, he's able to bring his son in. His son's able to get TV time over, proven wrestlers. And, years later now, you talk about, hey, I was just there just to get my son over. Like, that's the kind of reputation that they need to try to get away from, because I feel like people who have certain name cachet can come in and get whatever they want and do things their way. And then once they leave, they trash the company.
No, just getting his son over. Look, I have no problem with that, because, as a father, you want to help your son out in the business. And Bischoff would have carried some publicity and name value when he came to TNA. But, his son was fine. Look, he wasn't the best wrestler, he wasn't the best character in the world, those kind of things. But, I have no problem with Garrett Bischoff coming in and being he wasn't featured heavily within the Aces and Eights. But it's just the fact that it seems so transparent that Bischoff really was just there to milk as much money out of this company and then badmouth at the end. Look, you said yourself, you wouldn't go around bad-mouthing your old company that you've left. And, it's very easy to do. But, look, these guys paid them a lot of money. How dare they then turn around and say, oh, yeah, it was a piece of crap. That is rubbish. Every company has its ups and downs and its good and its bad faults. But to suck at the teat of who's paying you and then say the milk was sour, that was a horrible metaphor, by the way, it's just wrong in my eyes. And Bully Ray's another one. There's plenty of people who leave companies and don't badmouth them. And I could, without even thinking about it, I could most probably name off a dozen people who have not been critical of their previous companies. Or if they have, it's about a certain moment as opposed to the company. But Bischoff,
it's a lack of respect. It's a lack of respect, man. I mean, we've seen this story before. I mean, even when we talk about people who depart, and they take little jabs. And look, I mean, we don't know what happens backstage. And I'm saying this more for the talent. We don't know what happens backstage. I've just always kind of been of the mindset, like, if you're interviewed and you talk about it one time, good. But, I've never really liked running to social media just because you're only telling your side. You're not telling what actually happened. And I understand, that's really none of our business. But we see this happen time and time again. I mean, people do it for other companies too. Like, obviously with the E, and then when you see them come back, I mean, they end up kissing a lot of ass. But I feel like with then TNA, that used to just be the theme. Like everybody, there was no repercussions. No one cared. Like, if you go talk shit on TNA, like, what's going to happen, And it's unfortunate because it was people who were sometimes prominently featured in, like, a Bully Ray, who the company gave him the push of his life. He's never seen that push again. And then, that's what he does. It's one thing to be critical of certain people. And to be fair, he said it's not the talent. And that's what has been consistent. They always say it's never the talent. They always say it's management. And that's fair. But I mean, to keep on keeping on, I mean, you're years removed from it. I just don't see the place for it.
The thing is about management. I mean, what could be? I mean, I've never worked in a wrestling company. Maybe Trent might fill us in on some details on this. But I mean, because he works with AAW. But management. Okay, they might give you a shitty storyline and you don't want to do it. That's your prerogative. But I mean, other than that, and signing off your paychecks and making sure, what could be so bad about management within a wrestling company? I just don't get it. Is it a hostile working environment? Is it that they're forced to do these storylines? I can't think of any wrestler saying they've been forced to do something that they didn't want to do. And they get, I don't know.
I think a common thing, and look, I'm just brainstorming I just use it as, my own employer. Sometimes when I think of my own frustrations is because you're being told, if you do your best, our hard work pays off, or, certain, you work hard, you'll get the opportunities, as long as you try. So the only thing I could think what could turn people off is, you've been busting your butt trying to get TV time. This person comes in, they haven't paid no dues, so to speak, and, they're getting time over you. Because, it's competitive in that sense.
Oh, yeah,
so
I get that. I mean,
things like that.
But Billy Ray and Eric Bischoff, they got all the TV time they wanted.
Oh, so, yeah, well, and that's all the more reason. That's why I said I just think it comes from a lack of respect. Like, for you to say that, they probably feel like, hey, we're never going to go back there. Whereas if you with other companies, you might, parse your words carefully because you're like, hey, I don't want to burn that bridge.
Okay, so listeners, this is the challenge. This is the question that we're asking you on Bully Ray and Bischoff this week is, I always talk about them and I always call them scumbags, etc. And I don't like them. I think they're, as I said, elite shot on the wrestling industry. Can you tell me, both of them, other than from storylines that they've been given, like the Bully Ray thing, what of these two added to the industry? I just want someone to explain to me why they have the right to do this. Because as far as I can see, Impact treated both of these talents treated them very, very well. They gave them a lot of money, gave them the pushes of their careers. Not Bischoff, but help push Garrett. So let me know. Do they have a right to say what they're saying, or are these just assholes? There you go. That's a better way of putting it as opposed to scumbag. Arseholes. Right. So that's it from my point of view, but I think Ro usually has a topic or two he wants to throw in here. What have we got this week for us, Ro?
Yeah, obviously once this goes up, we already will know the result of Rebellion, more specifically the main event world title picture. Who, and I'm going to ask you, Adam, and as well as the listeners, who would you like to see be next in line? So pretty much here, I'll just throw this out here, and I know this is kind of fantasy booking that some people hate, but oh well. Main event of Slammiversary, you got your world champion. Who would you want to be challenging that world champion?
Okay, well, prediction-wise, I think we both agreed that we think that Johnny Impact is going to retain. So I can only really go on the basis that Johnny Impact is going to have the title. I don't think that Cage can come again at this point. I think that he most probably has to dip down for a little bit. And when we're talking offline, I think you agreed with me. So that means who's the next babyface to come up? And at the moment on the roster, there is only one person, and that's Eddie Edwards. He's the only one on the roster at the moment. Now, I know you're going to mention a few, and I don't want to take away from your thunder. But, I think you said about RVD. I can't really see that at the moment being so quick into the title picture. But there isn't another babyface on the roster. And we've talked about babyface and heels quite a lot in the past. So for me, I think you go with Eddie Edwards. But in the meantime, you do bring in a couple of new guys who have got name value, who can go into the main event picture at a later date. And I want to see Cross in there at some point, but he's not a babyface, so he has to be the guy who takes it off the next guy, if that makes sense. I think there'll be a transitional champ, so like Eddie Edwards could be the guy to take it off Johnny Impact and holds it until the next pay-per-view and loses it to Killer Cross. But I would be building up some baby faces, and if I was going to be building up baby faces, there's three names for me who are not with the company allegedly, who could be those people, and who I would be happy to see come in, get 3-4 months worth of build in a mid card, building up their character before going for the title. And that's a returning EC3, a returning Eli Drake, or even a returning James Storm. Now, actually, there is a fourth one who I'm going to throw in there, and that's Magnus. Although Nick Aldis did win his NWA title match last night, which is why I think that one is unlikely to happen. But the other three are all TNA Impact long-serving alumni. I would welcome any one of those back to come in and be pushed towards the title as a babyface. As a babyface.
Okay, and I'll run this real quick. Now, I would say the main event of Slammiversary, if it was just my thing, I would say Cage is the champion defending against Killer Cross. However, that doesn't mean that I have Cage winning at Rebellion. I think between now and Slammiversary, he wins the title from a transitional champion, and I think that transitional champion would be RVD.
So similar to me, that we're going to have a transitional champion. Johnny's going to retain, but you think RVD? I can't see how they can justify RVD going in it unless they do something like they did with Austin Aries, or even with Eli Drake, where there's a battle royal, or he returns and he challenges him to a match straight away. I think they'd get a lot of stick for that, and rightly so.
Well, who? I mean, maybe I just kind of think with him going to Philadelphia. And like I said, and maybe I'm looking too much into it, then going to Philadelphia, that would be the perfect time, because those fans, that's kind of, even them, if they were going to get flack, them bringing in RVD will probably bring the flack. Obviously, people are cool with it, so why not? You're not going to bring him in to, job to everybody. He's going to be, using a prominent role, and I'm sure he didn't cost cheap. So, you want to validate paying him that money. And I think if there was a time to do it, you do it at these Philadelphia tapings where he'll get over, and then, always have him drop it back. It's similar to a situation like we've seen the Lucha Brothers capture the tag titles in Mexico. Like, you want to capitalize on that stuff. So, I mean, it's just us predicting. I mean, I can be just as wrong as two left shoes. It's happened before. But that's just what I think is a possibility.
Listeners, let us know. And we'll ask you who you'd want to see it, but out of those two scenarios, what would you rather? Would you rather Eddie Edwards be a transitional champ, or would you rather see RVD in Philadelphia taking the title? Let us know below.
Or more so, how about this, to just simplify it? Give us your main event, a Slammiversary, with who's champion and who's the challenger.
Main event. You didn't ask me that question.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a completely different thing.
Yeah, I said originally. I said we're at Slammiversary. I said who's the champion. I said whatever the champion is, who do you have being the challenger? So mainly the biggest thing is who do you would love to see next in line. Sorry, I didn't elaborate enough.
Well, no, I was going to say if it's fancy booking for Slammiversary, I want to see ECW versus Ric Flair, but. ECW Zombie, I should say. So not ECW. But one's dead and one's nearly dead. So I don't think that's happening. Right. On that note, I think we should end up this week's show. Just a quick reminder of the trivia question. It was to do with Aces and Eights. Who was the second Sergeant at Arms in Aces and Eights? If you know it off the top of your head without cheating, fantastic. And you will definitely deserve a shout out next week. Try and have a guess, though. Without looking at any at the internet. I know you're on the internet listening to this at the moment, but yeah, try and do it without cheating, and we'll see who can come up with the right answer next week. And I would also appreciate someone to explain it to me, because I can't remember this happening or why this person was appointed. But there you go. All right, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe, leave us your comments, and give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. If you get a chance to share it on social media, even better as well. Enjoy Rebellion. Well, I hope you've enjoyed Rebellion, and we'll catch you next week.